Hello folks, hopefully you're having a very, very good day. It is a start to a new week, it is Monday, but before we get into any sort of hobby nightmare nonsense, let's jump into a little fundraiser that I wanted to shout out here. It is for Dizer or Dazer. Welcome to the Dazzle. Basically, this is for people with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Basically, these folks, their limbs kind of just detach themselves. And I don't mean they walk around on their own, I mean they just dislocate all of the time. And it is an incredibly painful thing to be living with. And we're trying to get a cure over there to these people. This was sent to me by a good friend of the channel who has had a hobby nightmare or two read out over the years, called Rob. He suffers from just such a disease and has overcome it. He has got a lovely wife now and a lovely hobby life going on, where he uses the hobby to basically push through what he's feeling, push through all of these different things that are going on with him. And he asked me to shout out these things, so maybe if you wanted to go and give him some love and raise some money for a worthy cause, this is a good way to do it. That is a not fun disease, man. It's that's horrible. That is horrible. The tissue and ligaments, things like that, anything that causes your whole... Basically, I wonder if it's similar to Volek syndrome. It's something that's in Mass Effect that Joker has. Like, his bones basically break if he leans on them too much. I guess it's similar to that, but like it just dislocates instead of breaking, which sucks, which is horrible. So if you want to help your fellow hobbyists, your fellow hobby brothers who are suffering from this condition out there, then make sure you go and give the link in the description a try. Maybe buy some stuff for your missus or for yourself. You know, just whatever helps. So moving on. Let's jump into our first and only hobby nightmare of the day, because it is quite a long one. It is from somebody called Turn to Ash. Now, me and Ash had a lovely conversation over on WhatsApp a little while ago, and he told me he would be sending in a hobby nightmare, so thank you very much for finally sending one in. He sent this over last night, and I read it in bed, and I thought, yeah, it's pretty cool, so I'll throw it at the front of the queue, because we did say that Mondays would be for Games Workshop ex-staffers or current staffers to generally wax lyrical about their time with the company. So here we are. He says, how's it going, North? It's all going well, thank you. Thank you for the channel and for the WhatsApp group. It's a great place. It's great to have a place to talk to colleagues in the Games Workshop retail space with no judgment. No problem. I have two... by the way, if you want to join the retail hobby nightmares group, just email me or send me a Discord message. I will not be accepting people into the group who are from higher management. It's not for that. People will think that you're spying on them, so I'm not going to do that. It's for lower level managers, staffers, right? Everybody's under nicknames, right? We're not using like things like that. So yeah, it's all for just venting and things. So if you are head of retail or somebody like that, or a trainer or somebody, probably not the best place for you, to be honest with you. But anyway, moving on. I have two hobby nightmares that hopefully you will get a lot out of. The first is from my time working as a store manager, while the second is from my current job working at Warhammer World in the more corporate studio side of things. I started working for Games Workshop in 2006, just after Horus Rising came out, as a store body / salesperson. Then, I moved into becoming a manager a few years later when I told my interviewer that I wanted to hold off on finishing uni as I wanted to put everything into working for the company. The thing about Games Workshop, they love people who commit to them. So if you are in an interview, even if you are telling a little white lie and have no intention of dropping other things for Games Workshop, just convince them of your want and need to help the company grow. You will be one of the strongest interviewees. That is true. Games Workshop are a very ego-driven company. If you say to them, hey, the minute I said I got a daughter, but I'm moving my life to where the store is to get involved with the company, that was it. They were sold on me. That's how I got my job at Games Workshop. They were just like, oh my god, this guy's like, he really wants to get involved here. And I did, I told them that I wanted my time at Games Workshop to be my last job. I didn't want to apply for any external jobs. I wanted to work for Games Workshop and retire at Games Workshop. Didn't work out in the end, but that's what I wanted to do, and that's what got me the job in the end, was that attitude. So yeah, if you can convince the people hiring you that Games Workshop is something that you want to devote your time and your life to, do it. Don't mention the hobby, don't mention the armies. If they ask you about your armies, then tell them about your armies and gush about them and how much you love Warhammer, right? That's the time. If they don't ask you, don't say anything about Warhammer or the hobby or painting, things like that. No. Just go in and talk fully about wanting to help the company grow and wanting to work there, wanting to be a part of the furniture until finally you retire. That's the thing to do, right? Anyway, my store was a really cool place. I really enjoyed pushing the community, and we were still around. We were still around 2010 when things were pretty stringent with Games Workshop, but the big ban hammer on games in the store had not occurred just yet. Whilst this era has been seen as a bad one for Games Workshop ignoring their fan base and generally making stupid decisions, the times in the stores, if your manager was alright, were actually pretty good in the UK in this era. I miss those days, but working at Warhammer World is basically working for Games Workshop on easy mode. No targets, just keep the ball rolling and be nice. Do your job, get a burger at Bugman's at the end of the day, then head home. The atmosphere in the studio is genuinely lovely, and I've been involved in a Tale of Four Wargamers series, so I'm glad to hear you're enjoying those. And no, I didn't win when it was my turn to be on one. One thing you have said in the past is that you are often told, and I quote, "Be careful about how you behave here at Games Workshop, it is easy to get kicked out of heaven," unquote. And whilst this does seem like a rather arrogant thing to say from Games Workshop workers when you're in retail, because retail is mostly hell and hard work, working at Warhammer World or in the studio is genuinely a little bit like that. You're wrapped in a blanket of cool people who love the hobby, and as long as you pull your weight, as in just do your job, you are golden if you have a decent attitude and can fit in well with people. That was a bit of a preamble, but it will come up later. Okay. Yeah, I did get that sense. People at Warhammer World were very, very protective of the company, because they knew which side the bread was buttered. It was such a... It did seem like walking around, being introduced to people, it did seem like a really cool place to work. I will say that. It seemed like an absolutely lovely place to work and get to know people and to actually being engrossed in the hobby. Even walking into Warhammer World, you get that sense of, wow, I work here. Do you know what I mean? Like, wow, I work here. Anyway. So the first hobby nightmare comes from my time working as a store manager. My store was a cool place, and I'm not just saying that because it was my store. The community was genuinely great, and they supported me even through lean times when sales were not that great. There was one group, however, who did their best to just annihilate the whole vibe. Now, I am not a Games Workshop apologist. Some of the decisions the company makes genuinely baffle me and always have. That is not to say that some decisions are not based in reality. Some of them definitely are. Ironically, gaming in stores, in my opinion, is one of those decisions, but I do think you get it wrong sometimes. There is no carpet ban on all gaming in all UK stores. It is just highly looked down upon and will get you in trouble in all but the largest and best run of Games Workshop stores. It is seen as a just reward for the best stores to be able to have clubs and run gaming nights. Is that right? No, not in my opinion, but still, it's a little different from what you've said. Okay. I would still identify that as pretty much a carpet ban if like 90% of your stores can't do gaming in their stores. Places like Tottenham Court Road, Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow, Edinburgh, right? These big stores, you can play games in them as far as I'm aware, but that is because, again, they're huge stores. I know in the Liverpool one you can't. All right, I know because I've tried to book it more than once. The last game I played in there was around 2015, I think, right? And that was when gaming in stores was getting faded out, really, bit by bit. By the time I worked for Games Workshop a year later, we were still running games in stores, but it was very much a privilege, not a right. You were literally very stringent in how you did your hobby time. And then a few years after that, after I left the company, that's when it became literally, we no longer do gaming in stores, right? And every single time I tried to book a game in a store, even in the Liverpool one, which is not a small store, well, it is a small store, but, when I tried to book a game in there, no, we don't do games in stores, right? But fortunately, there are enough places like Just Play Games here in Liverpool where you can go and get a really decent game of 40k in. with people who really enjoy the hobby. So it's not that big of a deal. I'd still rather have the one thing you miss at Games Workshop, and I say this all the time, it's really nice playing a game at a local game store. Like, it's really lovely, and, you know, but you're not the focal point. There's Magic the Gathering in there, there's other games in there that people might be playing. In a Warhammer store, in a Games Workshop store, you're playing Warhammer in the place where you play Warhammer. Do you know what I mean? And you know the store manager is there who knows a lot of the rules, you know, and you're there in the branding. It's a comfort thing. It really is. It's a comfort thing. I saw a video the other day talking about Halloween and how it was different back in the day, and I kind of get that. I kind of agree that it is a little bit different at times. But at the same time, I do think that a lot of the stuff that we talk about when it comes to Games Workshop is that nostalgia of being 13 again and looking up to these guys and being, you know, engrossed in this thing, you know. It's a lot harder to do that. You're diluted in noise when you go to a normal hobby store. Do you know what I mean? Even though they are great. Just Play is amazing. Really cool place to play 40k. But you are diluted. You are one of many games that are in that store on that day. Anyway. But yeah, I do think it's a carpet ban if, like, most of your stores can't do gaming in stores. And I know you said that it's looked down upon. Yeah, but looked down upon basically means don't do gaming in your stores or we will sack you. That's not... That's not like an option. That's a no, don't do this, you know? And treating it as a reward for bigger stores just sort of creates that dichotomy, right? They're going to get larger and larger and larger because they've got games in their stores, and the smaller stores are just treated as these like little hole-in-the-wall outlets. There's something magical about walking into a small Games Workshop store and being able to play a game in there, dude. You know? Remember those days? It was like rainy or snowy outside in the winter, coming up towards Christmas. You'd go in on a Tuesday, Wednesday afternoon to meet a friend there and just have a game on one of the tables, and the manager would stop by and see how you were doing, and he'd comment on your game and how cool your models were, and you'd talk about lore for a bit, and you may even get a cup of tea out of him. I did. You'd go and make you a cup of tea and come back. Say, oh, it's cold outside, isn't it? I'm going to send one of the lads, one of the staffers, to go get some hot chocolate. Do you want some? You know, that kind of a thing. That was the kind of place you'd go to at Games Workshop, especially if it was a quiet day. You know, awesome stuff. That's now no longer there. That's the kind of thing I lament. You know. Anyway, it's a little different from what you've said. Okay, we'll agree to disagree there and move on. The group who were trouble within my store were led by a lad named Jason. He was your typical, and I quote, "You need to know who I am and work with me" type that has come up on the channel before. The first time I met him, he came into my store like a general returning home from a successful campaign. He didn't offer to shake my hand and just said, and I'm ad-libbing here, "I'm Jason, I run Salty Wargamers," not the real group name. "You need to know who I am, and we could really use some mats for our next event." That's literally how the conversation went. I told him I couldn't give him stock out of my stock cupboard, and he said, "Well, Dave," the last manager, "set some stuff aside for us after gnome lossing it through the till. It's in the back, I'll show you, come on." And he immediately goes to walk behind the till and into the back room. The storeroom that is a private staff-only area. Dude. Yeah, that ain't happening in my store. No, absolutely not. Like, you're no. There are lines you don't cross. You don't have customers in your your staff area. The only customer I ever had in that area was somebody who I'd known for years, and you know he was a good guy, and you know and helped me in the store sometimes. I also had relief staff in there, but apart from that, no, like nobody got to go behind there. It was, you know, because if stuff goes missing from your stock room, it's so hard to catch because your stock on the in the actual shop floor is easy to do a stock check. Well, not easy, but you can do a stock check. You can even your eyeball test. You can see that things aren't there. In the back, though, there's so much stuff there. You can genuinely lose it, and you know that's not good. Anyway, I stop him and tell him this is not a public space and is for staff only. I'm busy right now. The store was busy, but I will look later. But even if Dave did known lost stuff for him, he shouldn't have. That is theft. It is, yes, technically. Unfortunately, I also did that. But I did it for like, if a kid was having a really bad day, I would known loss a paintbrush and give it to him. You know, nobody at Games Workshop HQ cares about that kind of stuff. They just say, please don't tell us you're doing that. Right? You know, we fully, we don't applaud you, but we understand that sometimes the good guys need a win. Do you know what I'm saying? So like, if a kid's coming into your store and is really upset, or he's had a really bad day because he's being bullied, give him a free white dwarf. You know, who cares? Who cares? Keep it quiet. Just say, hey man, like, I just wanted to cheer you up. Yeah, you're always welcome in the store. If you need to talk to anybody, you know, let me know. Here's a free white dwarf. Enjoy. You know, that kind of a thing. Turns their day around like that, like straight away. Autistic kids who are, you know, parents who are struggling financially. You know, they'll be. If a parent asked me for a freebie, I'd never give it to them. But if I would just speak to them and they just loved watching their kid play Warhammer with like really old models, yes, I would find a damaged quote-unquote box and just give it to them. You know what I mean? Not a big one. It'd just be like, you know, for instance, the old world boxes that were so battered I couldn't sell them. You know, there was one kid who was really into dwarves, and that kid got 4 or 5 boxes of dwarves out of me because I just couldn't sell them. Yeah, I'd known lost them already. I was gonna throw them in the bin. Why? Why would I do that? I'd sneak them to his mum. Like, yeah, I'll just put it under the Christmas tree. You know, tell him one of these boxes is from Games Workshop, right? Merry Christmas from Games Workshop, right? And it was free. The rest of them, just tell him you got them. It's fine. I can't sell them, right? They're battered. I feel bad giving them to you because you're going to have to wrap them up now and they're kind of battered. But, you know, the models are fine inside. So little things like that you can do as a Games Workshop manager. In fact, you're kind of expected to do little things like that every now and again, right? This is not a company who is full of evil asshats. It just isn't. There are some there. But generally, most of the time, if you did stuff like this, they just go, yeah. Now, don't do it all the time. Don't abuse it. There was one guy when I was working there who got sacked because he had an amazing track record of selling lots of models and nobody knew why. And he was held up as this like really good example of a really amazing manager for turning a store around. Then they did a stock check and realized he was just giving away he was doing like a buy one get one free on Land Raiders and shit like that. Like things are just flying off the shelf, which is not something you should do because that is theft and you shouldn't be doing that. But things that are already damaged, or a pot of paint here, a white dwarf there for a kid who's having a bad day, that's not going to get you into trouble as long as you keep it to yourself. And even if your trainer sees you doing it, 9 times out of 10 they're going to go, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? Anyway, we generally got into a bit of a back and forth about the validity of a manager just giving stock away to his friends before I excused myself and went to talk to other, more reasonable customers. Only a few minutes later, I caught Jason talking to one of his cronies over in the corner, and one of them attempted to sneak into the back to get their gear whilst I was talking to other customers. I shouted at him to step back from the staff room door, walked over to them, and then asked them to leave. Yeah, completely right thing to do. That is a massive abuse of trust. That you need to leave the store. Completely right thing to do. They looked shocked, of course they did. Yes, they're always shocked and appalled when, you know, they're caught. You know, yeah, of course. They looked shocked and appalled at my behaviour. But this was crossing a line for me. My own personal stuff is behind there in the stock room. My laptop, my jacket that my wife made for me. Also, several of my own highly regarded armies that I love very much. I don't want the general public walking around there unsupervised. They left, and the day continued on again. Dude, I completely get you. I get you. Yeah, it's a personal space. That's what people don't seem to understand. Those of you who want to go into the back room of Games Workshop or you know, things like that to get something that you're owed. I've seen this happen before where somebody's pre-ordered something, you know, and a manager said, yeah, I'll go get it for you in a minute. It's really sorry, I'm really busy right now. And they'll go and try and go into the stockroom to retrieve it themselves. No. You would not believe how many times that happens. The store I worked in as a staffer, we didn't have that problem because our stockroom was upstairs. so it's actually quite hard to find. But the store I ran, the stock room was right behind me, like literally not even behind the till, to the side of the till. It was so easy to just walk in, and the amount of times that there'd be a busy Saturday where a big thing would come out. It happened with the Imperial Guard Codex, and we had lots of chimeras and stuff coming in. My store wasn't the biggest, so a lot of the time I'd order models in, and they'd come in through the post because for the free postage. And the amount of people who would try and go into the back just to retrieve their models, quote unquote. I don't care if your name is on it or not. My personal property is behind there. I'm not letting you go in there on your own. By the way, it's kind of illegal. It's private property, and I'm not covered in insurance. If you walk behind that room there and you fall over and hit your head on a table and die, I am going to prison. Right? Because I have failed in my duty of care to the customers. I'm not insured. Shit is going to hit the fan, right? You go in there and you steal something. I'm gonna get in massive wads of trouble for that because I've let somebody go into a private area of the store. Just don't try and go into these areas and stores, please. You would not believe, as a normal person listening to Hobby Nightmares, how often this happens. Literally, I'd have once a fortnight at least. Somebody will come in and say, I'm just going to pop into the staff room and get my stuff. Is that all right? And I'd be like, no, it's not. It literally isn't. You will wait whilst I deal with something else, and I will go and get it for you, no problem. If I'm not busy, I will go and get it for you right now. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be a dick about it, you know? Anyway, in other nightmares, there have been boycotts of Games Workshop stores, and my story is no different, dude. Jason and his special friends, who called themselves the cool kids, quote-unquote, fucking cringe, wrote into Games Workshop about my behaviour in an attempt to get me removed as store manager, and even told Games Workshop that I had threatened them with violence and things like that, which were complete lies. Luckily, I asked a few of my regulars who were there at the time with me to stick up for me if they could, and they did, writing in to disprove the claims and out Jason and his ilk as just troublemakers who've been banned from other stores in the past. The thing is, for a while there, things looked dicey until Games Workshop actually investigated what was going on. Games Workshop does not look kindly on managers crossing the line with customers. And what Jason was accusing me of was just that, even though nothing of the sort occurred. I could have easily have lost my job. Not that the cool kids cared, they just wanted their stolen gaming mat. Jesus. Yeah. Crossing the line with customers. There are certain ways you can. Like I know a lot of customers who dated mums. That kind of thing is generally allowed. But you've got to be very careful, because the minute that mum says, he's being creepy, you're done. You've lost your job, right? I know many dudes who got long-term partners from mums simply because you're working in a Games Workshop. They're bringing their little lad in, and he's lost his dad, who's like left home or whatever, and they see a tall, relatively handsome guy who's got a stable job, stable income, and is good with their kid. One thing leads to another. They start playing with their hair whilst talking to you, that kind of a thing. It happens a lot. But you have to be very, very careful. That's the only form of customer personal interaction that I think Games Workshop don't frown upon completely. Do you know what I mean? My trainer once had a kid turn up to his house because he was getting bullied in school. That kind of a thing. He was like, "Oh my god, no!" Then he had to do a lot of phone calls to basically get himself in the clear there. Because it's weird and it shouldn't happen. But kids will glom on to role models. And, in a weird way, it's kind of a compliment, right? You're doing your job right if this kid feels that reassured by your presence. But still, they don't look kindly to crossing the line with customers at all. And, yeah, you easily could have lost your job here, dude. If this had gone another way, or if you already weren't liked, but if you already had an meh reputation at Nottingham, or they just didn't even know who you were, you were quite new, you stood a good chance of losing your job here. Things thankfully calmed down, but I was always super suspicious of gaming groups coming into the store from that day onwards. It kind of poisoned things for me in the retail space, And so when a position came up at the studio, I decided to apply for it. And with a now decent rep as a painter within the company, a few qualifications in English, I had a master's degree in literature and put off my PhD to come to Games Workshop, as I mentioned before, I got the job. So, I have loved my time at the studio in Nottingham. I think honestly I want to retire here. It's amazing. The thing is though, there are always bad parts to every single job. The one bad part about Nottingham is that you can feel the cliqueiness of the place. It is very weird. Now this is not a clique that you can try to be a part of. You either are part of it or you are not. Luckily for me, my rep was already good. I was a known entity coming in, and so I gelled in rather quickly. I made a few friends, and before long I was a part of the furniture, working in what I can only describe as the best place to ever work if you love this hobby. I can imagine that. Can you imagine around Christmas time going into Warhammer World to work? Going into the studio, sitting down at your desk and just writing Warhammer lore all day? Dude. You know what I mean? Here is the thing. Just because somebody does not fit the clique, just because they are generally rejected and shown the door, that does not mean they are bad people. That's true. I have seen some really awesome dudes join head office only to leave a few months later, mostly to go back to retail in 40k, as they just didn't fit in. It is a very strange phenomenon. There is no rhyme or reason to it, it just happens. Someone joins, tries their best to join in and integrate, and it just doesn't work out. It's like oil and water. I'm sure you've been in situations where no matter what you seem to say, it comes off as awkward or try-hard. People can just sense your lack of confidence in the current situation, and you are labelled as an outlier or outsider in the social group. Yeah, man, it's happened to me. Mainly in bar work. Like, in bar work, I was, like, at least 2 bars where I'd work my ass off, and every time the staffers would just talk to each other, I'd walk in and join the conversation, and the conversation would just die, and people would just walk off. You know? And I hadn't done anything. I just literally joined the team, right? Literally, just joined. And that kind of shit would happen. But there would be other bars where it would be the opposite, right? There was a bar in London that I worked in, where I got high-five from the manager. Hey, man, Dean, how's it going? You know, I'm like, yeah, dude. He's like in his 30s, and we had a really good time. And everybody there was really nice. And we all pulled in together and had you know, good shifts. But there were at least 2 other bars that I worked in during my time that I just, you know, it wasn't nice. It was very cliquey. It was very, you know, they decide about you before you even open your mouth. It seems you just walk in and they've decided you're not for them, and it's unfair. It's really shitty, and I really hate it. And I wish it wasn't a part of the human experience. But there we go. It can even happen with friends you've known for years. One of the most hurtful things you can experience is a good friend you've known for a long time treating you differently in front of another of their friends that you don't know. That is the kind of feeling you get at Nottingham if you just don't fit in for some reason. Yep, done that too. Yep. Known a guy for years, and then another friend will come in that he's also known for years but that I've not met before, and he'll treat me differently in front of that other friend, like worse. You know what I mean? He'll just be like a real dick to me in front of that other friend. It's like, well, dude, what are you doing? You know? What are you doing? Anyway. Thing is, though, guys, remember, your mind is your solace. Who you let in is up to you. You can literally go, okay, that person's no longer in the circle. He's no longer in the brain trust. You know? That's your decision. It's what it is. I saw one of these situations with a friend of mine called Steve, who joined the company from outside. The dude was pumped. He was going to get to work with the studio team and generally just have fun with the company he loved and the models he loved. He practically bounded in to work on his first day, ready to go. He was such a polite and lovely guy, but unfortunately, I wouldn't be working directly with him. This was a super busy time, and generally we were all running around like headless chickens. As the weeks went on though, I started to notice the light sort of fade from Steve's eyes, and the spring fall from his step. One day, I went over to sit with him at lunchtime, only for several of my friends at the studio to look at me like I was weird for doing so. It was like high school. It was so weird. I asked him how things were going, and he shocked me by telling me he was thinking of leaving actually and taking a job in IT in the city. that this wasn't really for him. This did not sound like Steve. He had practically shot to the moon when they accepted him for the role, so I dug a little deeper, and yep, Cliques. His team had basically had 2 words to say to him since he joined. They didn't invite him to do anything. Whenever he tried to ingratiate himself, integrate, or generally strike up conversations, he was met with indifference at best and coldness at worst, for no reason. He told me they seemed to have made up their minds about him the minute he walked through the door. There we go. There we go. He was a large, decent-looking Black Templars fanboy. I have no idea if that had anything to do with it, but to see this guy so hurt and beaten really got to me. I asked if he could join our team instead, but was met with a rejection. For all of his misery, he was actually really good at his job, and his team actually needed him over there. In the end, I had a word with one of the guys over there, a ringleader by the name of Lucy. She told me they hadn't treated him any differently, and I got the distinct impression I just made things worse despite telling her that Steve had not asked me to speak on his behalf. I just noticed that he was off when speaking to him myself. Yeah, probably. Yeah, they probably are going to think he's been telling tales. You know what I mean? That's. But again, man, I can't have a go at you for this. I think you've done the right thing. You tried to solve the problem. You tried to look out for your friend, and you covered for him. So look, no, he didn't ask me to do this. I've just noticed he's been a bit different recently. Like, is everything okay? Is he all right? You know, that kind of thing. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that at all. Yeah, don't take guilt that's not yours, dude. I think you did the right thing. Steve left a few months later for the IT job, and has been promoted there a few times since. We stay in touch and play the odd game at my or his place every few months, but we avoid talking about my job because it opens up some hurtful doors to him. He walked away from the hobby entirely to focus on his new job for years when he finally left Nottingham. For all the amazing parts to working here, the close-knit nature of nerds and Games Workshop can mean that actively cool, talented people who love Warhammer sometimes bounce off. Not because of the hobby or for a lack of skill, but through the lack of warmth they get if they walk into the wrong room, say the wrong thing, or just piss off the wrong person without ever realizing it. Anyway, thanks for the channel again, North. Have a good one. Turn to Ash. Okay. So, yeah. I'll be honest. I think that's something that happened to me, man. Like, yeah, I walked into the wrong room, said the wrong thing to the wrong person, and that was it. I've gone over the story many times. It's part of the folklore. I'm not going to go into it again. But yeah, my time working at Games Workshop, I said the wrong thing to my trainer, I think, once. And I sent the wrong email to the wrong person once. And that was it. Done. Right? I got somebody's name wrong. For those of you who want to know, I got somebody's name wrong on an email, right? And I questioned my trainer when he said something, basically, without going into too much detail. The stories are all there. They're all on the channel. Go check them out. But yeah, that's pretty much what I did. And that was it. I was done. From that moment on, they were looking for an excuse to part company, shall we say. So I feel Steve's pain. It wasn't as much of a dream job for me at this stage. By the stage I left, I was ready to go, you know. It seems like retail at Games Workshop is not a dream job. It's not. If you get a really good manager, then yeah, maybe. But like in reality, it's not a dream job. For me, like if I work in like the Liverpool store and there's a decent manager there, and I can get the bus into town, I can work hard and love the hobby, that's a great job, right? Because we've got 2 incomes in this household, and you know I've been making decent money, and that's fine. You know, in a flat on your own, working at Games Workshop, that as a retail staffer, that is bad. And if you don't get a really good manager, that it can be really, really soul destroying and really, really, really bad. You know, so working at Games Workshop retail isn't a dream job. What Steve had here does seem like it was a dream job, so he had it worse than me, is what I'm trying to say. And that really sucks. It wasn't taken away from him, that he was forced to give it up. And yeah, that sucks, man. And I'm glad he's doing well now. But Steve will always have that bit in the back of his mind of it should have worked out differently. You know? Because even I have that, and I know it couldn't have worked out any differently by the way I was treated. Right, the way I was treated, it couldn't have worked out any differently to how it worked out at Games Workshop, right? But even I have those moments where I think, well, what if? Well, what if? You know? What if I'd just done this differently? What if I hadn't have said that to my trainer? What if I had, would I still be there now? But it's all pie in the sky, I love my hobby, I love my channel, and I think life's worked out how it's supposed to work out, essentially, you know what I mean? Anyway, I love you all long time. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm not sure if I will be doing a video tomorrow. I'm pretty busy on Tuesday. It's the busiest day of the week this week. So if I don't, I'll be doing 40k Space Marine chapters on Thursday and some more Hobby Nightmares on Wednesday. All right? I love you all long time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll speak to you soon. Have a good one. Bye now.